Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I gotta be honest, I thought I'd be asleep by now, but I started reading this article and I couldn't take my eyes off the article because the article has dramatic repercussions for what may take place coming up in the world that we're going to see. If the source is right, what they're saying in this article is mind-blowing, even though you're reading it on a page and you're like, oh God, that's going to have dramatic ramifications depending upon what people do. Brinksmanship. Will people pull themselves back from the ledge? Who will pull themselves back from the ledge from the standpoint of their actions and their activities? This has nothing to do with who's right or who's wrong. Who will pull themselves back from the ledge? Because, let's be honest, both sides create a story and a narrative for themselves to allow themselves to be right or wrong in a particular context. Now, there is an objective reality here. I would say that people who are attacking that government are wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that the government is good and great and just and virtuous. It just means that there are other people in other parts of the world that are instigating themselves in what is taking place in that country. And in doing so, has been responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of human beings, or at the very least help push along this idea of the deaths of all those people. This is going to have massive ramifications. So the source is saying that Bashar al-Assad has passed a secret message to Vladimir Putin. In that secret message, they've made the point that we're sick of Israel. They're bugging us. They're attacking us in our territory. We're sick of that. And we're not asking Iran to go anywhere while there are other forces in our territory, and our territory remains occupied. Now, the reason they're saying this is because there was some deal that they were trying to work out where Iran will stay X amount of places away from a particular territory. The United States has given this kind of weird ultimatum to Iran that they would leave Syria, even though Iran is the legal government that's there. Russia and Iran were invited. Guess who wasn't invited? Guess who instigated themselves in something, who wasn't invited in the least, and just ignored the sovereignty of another country? Yeah, ding, ding, ding. That was us. That was us. We did that. We are the party in this that doesn't supposed to be there. We are the factor that's protecting the terrorists in this situation. We, us. That's us. That's what we're doing. We're helping the terrorists. Hurts when I say that, and nevertheless it's true. They're saying they're sick of that. They're not going to continue to take this level of provocation from Israel. And not just that, while their territory is occupied, they're including Golan Heights. Now, if you remember, Golan Heights is the area with all of the oil wealth, all of that oil wealth that Israel took, and then, through their own laws, said it was theirs. Annexed the property. Now, the international community doesn't necessarily acknowledge that annexation, but Israel, under his own laws, annexed it anyway and set up shop, set up base, started assisting and helping terrorists to create a luff between Golan Heights and Syrian territory. Because in that case, if you help the terrorists, if you have terrorists in that region, you can prevent the Syrian army from getting to you because they have to go through the terrorists. If they're including Golan Heights, and if they get to the point of taking operations to try to take Golan Heights, will the United States get involved? Israel can take care of itself, yes, but will the United States and the international community get involved? Now, if the United States tries to take down Damascus, or starts opening up, and let's say a wider distribution of fire and shooting, and they end up killing Russians, does Russia get involved? Is it possible to take down Syria without necessarily hitting Russia? And would Russia allow such a thing to take place? No, Russia hasn't necessarily given a blank check, but we don't necessarily know what degree Russia is willing to put itself on the line in protection of Syria. From what I understand, there was a certain point where Trump wanted to have a much wider attack, and it was made clear to them that if you do that, You're ending the world because we are involved ourselves in this conflict. How many countries do you have involved in this? What? United States, the UK, France, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Israel, of course Russia. You have the setting of a worldwide conflict. You've also have these blocks of countries that would align themselves in similar ways as they aligned themselves in World War I. This is terrifying of what could take place in this little corner of the world. Little corner of the world. Let me read this article because I was fascinated by this. There's a source, a mole. Moles are always interesting things. And in this case, this mole is giving some fantastic information. That's better. It's messing with me. The Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has communicated to the Russian leadership that Israel has exhausted our patience. Israeli jets will be legitimate targets for our defensive systems if Tel Aviv doesn't cease its provocation and stop targeting our military positions and jets. Israel has been attacking them. Syria has not responded. So yeah, it's a provocation. Israel is the only country that has nuclear weapons, missiles, attacks everybody. And a person with a rock is a terrorist. A person with a rock is a terrorist. Let's keep going. According to the decision makers, Assad has no intention of asking Iran and his allies to leave the Levant as long as the Syrian territory is occupied. Assad has included the Golan Heights in all occupied Syrian territories, as well as the North Syria, where the Turkish and the United States forces, unlike those of Iran, are present without the consent of the Syrian government. There are other countries occupying our territory. And as for the Turkish part, do you remember when Erdogan was having a conversation, and in that conversation they got him on tape talking about a false flag in Syria using a framework of Al-Qaeda, saying that if we say Al-Qaeda, we can do whatever we want. We can just tell the world Al-Qaeda. That's all it takes. If you remember, he shut down the internet or shut down YouTube in order to prevent that from getting out into the hands of Turkish, into his population. These people are they're in that country illegally. And nobody cares that they're in the country illegally. The media in this country talks about it as if it's the most natural thing in the world for one country to militarily invade and occupy another country illegally. Nobody says anything about it. It's perfectly okay. Oh, it's just a military occupation where we bomb and kill and we protect terrorists. That's all. When little Johnny joined the U.S. military, he knew that he was giving his life and leveraging his bravery to help bloodthirsty head choppers. That's what he wanted to be when he grew up, when he joined the U.S. military. That's awesome. I'm being sarcastic. That's not why he wanted to join the military. They're leveraging the bravery of the people of this country to do really horrific things. It needs to stop. Let's keep going. Moreover, according to the source, Assad believes that the Syrian government will not be tamed by offers presented by Russia for a plan which will propose a return for all refugees so as to be able to run the forthcoming elections over the entire Syrian territory and the reconstruction of Syria by international community in exchange for Iranian withdrawal. However, the implementation of the UN Resolution 242, withdrawal of Israeli armed forces from territories occupied in the recent conflict, and the respect of the Syrian sovereignty, cessation of Israeli violation of Syrian airspace, is the right path for the withdrawal of all forces from Syria, including those of Iran, said the source. Look, if you get out of our country, stop bombing us, maybe. We are a country and we have the right to invite whoever we want into this country. Now, you are occupying us. Maybe we wouldn't need them in this country if you weren't militarily occupying us. It's the right path. But by the way, it's a sovereign country. It can do whatever it wants. Russia is trying to create stability in the Levant, considered a permanent base for its forces and an essential platform for much larger economic future and link to the world. TASS news agency said Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Chief of the General Staff Army Valery Gerasimov visited the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss issues concerning the Syrian conflict. The two are meeting as part of the pre-organized exchange of visits established during Netanyahu's last visit to Moscow, where he met the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Russia is caught between two tough countries, Syria and Israel, where the respective leaders do not give anything away without a hard bargain. However, seeking an Israeli withdrawal from the occupied Golan Heights is an impossible task for Putin, particularly with Netanyahu in office. Therefore, it is most likely that Israel will continue violating Syrian airspace and bombing targets randomly. In exchange, it is also expected that Russia will watch happily the Syrian army responding to those expected Israeli attacks, with the slim hope of both parties trying to make concessions over their respective demands. Essentially, Russia is in this place of trying to be a mediator, with the guy who we vilify, Vladimir Putin, sitting there trying to essentially meld these two opposing sides together. This is amazing. It is expected that Russia will continue to communicate to the Israeli premier the possibility that the Syrian will fire against Israeli jets and respond to any future aggression. This is getting hot. It's one thing when Israel is invading the airspace. What is it going to be when Israel jets are being shot down out of the air? What then? Even as the Syrian army and its allies were liberating the south of Syria, the provinces of Dar and Qatara, and during the attacks against the Islamic State designed to liberate the villages and the territory under the control of the occupation, 4 Israeli jets violated the Lebanese airspace and fired from above the Bekaa Valley. 10 missiles were fired against Syrian military targets between the cities of Zara and Deir Zamar and rural Homs. 6 of the missiles reached their target. They're in their territory, liberating their territory from terrorists. That sounds funny. Territory from terrorists. The Israeli government flies down with their jets, being air support for terrorists, and attack the Syrian government. The government that's rightly responsible for taking back their territory. That's pretty fucking amazing. Now, what is the Syrian government to do in this situation? Is it to allow those jets to attack their forces, or are they going to blow those fucking jets out the sky? They have the right to blow those jets out of the sky if those jets are supporting terrorists and attacking their troops. That would be with any country. There is no country where you could deny that right to. Let's keep going. The following day, on the 24th of July, Israel launched a Patriot missile against the Syrian Su-22 M4 jet while bombing ISIS in South Qatara. This is considered a violation of the 1974 agreement that permitted air forces of two sides, Syria and Israel, to operate on their own respective lines without interference from the other side. Israel, feeling strong with the United States' support and believing Russia is on its side, is provoking and challenging the Syrian army. Damascus is expected to wait for the appropriate moment to fire against Israeli settlements or cities once the south of Syria is cleared from ISIS, or perhaps when the opportunity arises. Please tell me you can understand the severity of what I've just read. This war is getting hot, and it's getting to the point where the Syrian government may knock Israeli jets out of the sky. What does that mean from the standpoint of the United States? What does that mean from the standpoint of any level of attack between these two sides? Meaning, if this gets to the point where it's actually a hot war, what does that mean? What is our involvement? Do we get involved? Israel is losing this. What do we do? Now, Israel has the 4th rated military on the planet. We've given them billions and billions of dollars. So I would imagine that they can take care of themselves. You would think. But how does that ever stop us before? So, all of these countries are focused on this one very specific point on the globe. And you've gotten to the point where it's not just ISIS and the terrorists anymore. It's the people who've been supporting the terrorists. And if that gets into a hot war between those two sides, I have no idea what that will spiral into. But it will not come away good. It will not come away good. I'm putting this article at the bottom so you guys can read for yourselves. Syria can go to the UN. Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. You fool, the spirit bomb won't work in this situation. The spirit bomb, that's absolutely hilarious. Dragon Ball Z. We're talking about the world coming to an end and a whole level of chaos and fire. But yeah, Dragon Ball Z. That's exactly what's going to take place. The spirit bomb. This is terrifying. We, right now, are trying to push Iran into chaos. And trying to push Iran to chaos, we've been supporting other terrorist groups to try to take down Syria. At the exact same time, we're trying to push economic warfare on Nicaragua in this kind of soft coup, while doing the same to Venezuela. We are creating chaos around the world. We are doing that through our policies, through foreign policy, and through militaristic means. We're not working to the best ends. This idea of freedom and democracy and everything else is laughable. It's utterly laughable. And yet, even doing all of this stuff around the world with a straight face, the whore wiping the lipstick, the street lipstick, screaming she's a virgin. The whore screaming she's a virgin. Yeah. I'm going to end this here. This is, I hope people can understand where I'm coming from with this. This is, to some degree, monumental in regards to what may take place. If the Syrian government decides it wants to take back the Golan Heights, that is monumental in what that will mean. If the Syrian government says Israel's not leaving anywhere, and if you invade our airspace, we're going to knock you out the fucking sky. Again, that's monumental. These things are talking about wars that have spiraled from this idea of ISIS purely into this idea of regional powers, nations, going after one another. By the way, nations that we back and we're on opposing sides and backing, meaning Russia and the United States. We are one proxy issue away from an international incident involving nuclear powers. That is terrifying. That is terrifying. So I'm going to end this here. I'm not knocking sex workers. Sex should be illegal. They shouldn't have to charge for that. And I'm also using it for the phonetics, the way it sounds. Hey, I can say working girls, if that sounds better. The working girl calling herself a virgin. The language is the same. My point that I'm making is I'm trying to make in a somewhat inelegant way. It's the same. You can't engage in this type of behavior and pretending you're not engaging in this type of behavior. And that's what the United States is doing. And I know what he's saying. I'm knocking sex workers by comparing them to politicians. That's true. That's true. And I missed that joke. I'm sorry. I missed that. But no, I'm not kicking sex workers. Leave them out of America's genocidal acts, yeah. Iran is not like the rest of the Middle East. They're highly organized, mobilized population. They're also a RU client state. Yeah. Look, I don't think Russia wants them to fall, nor do I think they want Syria to fall. Why would they want them to fall on their border? And yeah, he needs to, you can say, solidify his allies in this case. We treat those countries like they're not real. Have you noticed that? Like, when we're talking about that stuff, we knocked down a country, killed 1 million people, and we go about our business as if that didn't happen. That's 1 million people. What does that look like? How much pain is that? How do you quantify the pain of 1 million people being rubbed off the face of the earth for some goofball. And that goofball has never had to stand in trial or consequence for his actions. Somebody threw a shoe at him and it was a big international incident. He should be hit by a fucking truck. Killed 1 million people. And now we have another goofball president who's barreling his way to doing something similar. John Bolton in that administration in and of itself gives you a clear idea on what that administration is talking about doing. Add in Mike Pompeo to this. Trump supporters should be screaming at the top of their lungs. You agreed with me on this. If nothing else. If you agree, nothing fucking else. If every word that came out of my mouth, you looked at the screen and screamed, socialists! You fucking socialists! If you did that, fair enough. But on this one issue, please tell me there's a certain commonality that says, I don't want our military blowing the shit out of other people. Decent people who just so happen to be under government that they don't particularly like, in the same way that you yourself are under a government that you don't particularly like. With less freedom of movement, but at the same token, trying to live their lives to whatever way they can live their lives. If even on this issue, just on this issue, you agree with me, we should not be using our military and our economic might to beat the shit out of another country. How well did it go in Iraq? And do you want to see a repeat of what took place in Iraq times maybe 1,000? Your support of Trump should not be a blank check. And at the moment where he breaches that support for something this massive, this absolutely against what he talked about when he was running in office, and one of the reasons that you chose him over Hillary Clinton, this idea that Hillary Clinton was going to start a goddamn nuclear war. What is Trump doing? What is Trump doing? Yes, he may be pulling you out to some degree of Syria or de-escalating, but he is ramping up in Iran, and he is setting up economic warfare in Iran. Look, I guess my feeling is, what I'm hoping is, you learn from the mistakes of lefties. When Obama got in office, they gave him a blank check. They gave him a blank check for over a year. I would hope that you would look at what Trump is doing and realize that one issue after the next, he has failed you. This is not me saying go to the Democrats. Fuck. No. By no means. This is me saying, looking at your political system and looking at the person who you have as the head, and you put him in that office because there were certain things that you believe that he believed. There were certain things that I would say you've been led astray on, but whatever. But in this particular issue, it seems as if he is barreling towards this idea of a war. This is not like North Korea. This is different. This is different. All right, I'm going to end this here. The key point to take away from this is Assad secret meeting with Putin, sick of the shit that Israel is putting down, and is taking a more hawkish tone once it consolidates its power in that particular region. Israel, to their credit, have been bombing and attacking Syrian and Iranian sources. These people have not necessarily fought back yet, but that period, for the most part, is at an end. They will no longer tolerate it, and they will defend their ground, including Golan Heights, the area that Israel has stolen, calls its own, is full of oil, and may become a flashpoint for a larger conflict. It's always great. They're just like us. You could be them. You could have woke up in a bed in Iran this morning. It is a quirk of fate that you didn't. It is an absolute, entire quirk of fate. They're living in a situation just like you're living in a situation. They need to make ends meet just like you need to make ends meet. And they would function in that system because that is the only system they know, in the same way that you would function in the system to which you are functioning because it's the only system you know. Why do you let oil companies take billions of dollars? Why do you allow people to sleep on the street? Why do you allow politicians to enrich themselves in the way that they enrich themselves and not support the people at all. Why? Why? Now, as you ask these questions of Iran, understand that in the same way they don't necessarily have answers, or they don't have any necessarily way to impress what they want on the political establishment. It is the same way, in the same measure, that you don't have the capacity to impress what you want on the political establishment. In the same way that they have a roguish government, you have a roguish government. If there's a flashpoint and there's a war, it doesn't matter that that person over there may be similar to you. It doesn't matter that they will bleed the same, feel pain in similar ways. Those that are going to be the people that get rubbed off the earth. Not the people that the government said they're going to stop, but the regular, everyday people that you could have woken up in the body of if there was a different quirk of fate. We're murdering human beings. Murdering human beings. They're not terrorists, they're not thugs, they're just human beings trying to live their goddamn lives. And we're murdering and rubbing those people off the map. We did it in Iraq, and we pretend as if these are not real governments when we're doing these things too. Did you realize that we're making this worse? If you really wanted to change the government of Iran, you would leave Iran to its fucking devices and let Iran implode on its own weight and let those people change that country. What you're doing, if any changes are made to Iran, you're creating a hostile environment towards you and your interests that will bite you in the ass. You already toppled that regime, that government that was there. Secular, democratically elected government, toppled them. You ended up with a brutal dictator in that country. And that country knew full goddamn well that you were the one that toppled that government. And they were hostile to your interests after that. That was something that was deep-seated in the consciousness of the society because it was real and it was true of what took place. The faux anger at Iran, all of this hatred for Iran, is boiled purely down to because they are not under our domain of control. We hate them for it. That's all it is. All of those countries, Syria, Russia, if it is beyond the domain and control of us, we hate it and we deride it. I'm going to end this here because I don't necessarily want this to go too long, but if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the Patreon. I don't know how many of these I'm going to do. I have work to do from the standpoint of our trip, but I'm awake. If I don't pass out, I probably will be back. See you guys in a few. I'm having low energy. I'm probably going to have to get coffee. Somebody's going to be like, there's a low energy video. That's what I'm probably going to say. God damn it, that's a low energy video. All right, guys. If you enjoyed the content, have a good one.